Welcome YouTube visitors and welcome to another edition of Around the World News. This evening we're going to talk about the Trump administration. This is April 4th, 2017, so let's get right into it. The more I think about Trump's February 18th surprise decision to defend NATO, the more I believe this U-turn will someday be seen as one of the biggest mistakes any president ever made. I see it as a continuation of a domino effect begun by Washington in the 1940s. At the end of the World War II, all major nations except the United States had been devastated. America was still completely intact and was the largest and richest industrial giant the world had ever known. The governments of West Europe went to Washington hat in hand, begging for handouts. Washington's answer was, if you join with us against Moscow, we will give you money. In today's dollars, Marshall Plan largesse amounted to about $120 billion. Just 20 years after Germany had looked like the aftermath of Armageddon. It was one of the world's most vibrant and advanced countries. The other European nations took the low road, moving strongly in the direction of socialism. The way European politicians kept their welfare states growing was by begging for more handouts from Washington. These came in the form of military protection. U.S. officials implied to the Europeans, you don't need to spend money protecting yourselves. We will do that for you. And you can use the savings for lavish giveaway programs. In a domino effect, this subsidization of Europe's socialist welfare states finally led to Europe today being a major economic train wreck. Unfortunately, the socialist rot eventually spread to Germany too, and now most of Europe is a mess. Both economically and militarily, Europeans are practically helpless. In voting for Trump, millions of Americans were responding to his promise to stop using our tax money to prop up Europe. Voters were heartened by his plan to exit NATO and tell the Europeans they would now need to provide for their own defense. Then on February 18th, Trump stabbed these voters in the back. In a perfect U-turn, he told Europeans that Washington would protect them no matter what. Continuing military protection of NATO is a mistake big enough to outweigh the gains from all other measures. War is the most expensive thing humans do. Like much of America, European populations are addicted to U.S. aid. The only way they will break their habit is if Trump forces them to go cold turkey, which he has apparently decided not to do. So, in a continuation of the Marshall Plan, domino effect, Europe will grow worse. In short, after 69 years, the Marshall Plan is still alive, still subsidizing foreign welfare states. The reluctance to defend themselves is not limited to the Europeans. Tokyo is an example. In Japan, the purpose of the armed forces is widely regarded as disaster relief against earthquakes and such. Military defense against Beijing, Pyongyang, let me spell this is a tough one, P-Y-O-N-G, Pyongyang, I guess, Y-A-N-G, in Moscow, is seen as the responsibility of America because U.S. politicians have promised it. In 2014, Chinese rulers created 3 new national holidays that are anti-Japanese. The Day of Remembrance of the 1937 Nanjing Massacre, a victory day to celebrate the 1945 defeat of Japan, and a Martyrs' Day dedicated to persons who died fighting Japan. Why would Chinese rulers do this if it isn't to prepare the population for war against Japan? By far the most corrupt part of this is the fraud perpetrated on U.S. men and women in uniform. When young Americans volunteer for the armed forces, they are encouraged to think they're going to sign up to risk their lives defending America. The fact is, they're risking their lives all over the globe defending people who refuse to defend themselves. Trump's U-turn has sold us out to NATO. The remark by a Persian Gulf official during the 1991 war against Iraq and Kuwait, quote, "You think I want to send my son to die for Kuwait? We have our white slaves from America to do that," unquote. In the elections, voters were attracted by Trump's America First promise. But in staying loyal to NATO, he is not putting America first. He's putting the federal government's global empire first. On February 18th, stabbing millions of voters in the back, his Vice President, Mike Pence, told the Europeans that Washington would be unwavering in its support for NATO. Then his Homeland Security Chief, Michael Chertoff, said there is a strong, deep, and enduring commitment to Europe and to NATO. I guess you know that Mike Pence is a neocon, and while he's a professing Christian, I kind of doubt it. Very few people in office are Christians. Just get that straight right now. God has not chosen the noble, well, not many noble or rich, or the wise of this world are chosen. Doesn't say none are chosen, but not many. I think the jury is still out on Mike Pence. Anyway, either that or Mike Pence is compromising with the deep state, with the global elite. Anyway, Vice President Pence seems to have emerged the leader in this renunciation process. We may be only a short step away from other world leaders who wish to deal with Washington deciding to phone Pence instead of Trump. The U.S. vote only matters inside the United States. The other 95.6% of the world's population, what counts is recognition by other governments. Rather, for the other 95.6% of the world's population, what counts is recognition by other governments. The USA is about 2% of the Earth's surface. The armed forces are far more than adequate to protect this 2%. But that's not their real job. The true purpose is to be a global cop imposing Washington's will wherever and however U.S. politicians decide. This requires hegemony not over 2% of the population, or rather the world, but 100%. And the highly stressed armed forces are nowhere close to being able to do it. The days of Washington running a global champagne empire on a root beer budget are over. This bottomless fountain of federal megalomania. Now that was by Richard J. Mayberry in his newsletter, U.S. and World Early Warning Report, dated April and May of 2017. Next piece is by Joe Skousen from World Affairs Brief, dated March the 31st, 2017. And I quote, Trump has brought into his administration, either by initial bad choices or by allowing the controlled media to drive good choices away, numerous globalists and neocons, including National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, Defense Secretary James Mattis, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. Much of the blame has to be aimed at his National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, especially as the Trump administration takes a more aggressive interventionist policy in Yemen and Syria, despite Trump's campaign promises to put America first and not be so anxious to intervene around the world. Rather than continue sanctions against Saudi Arabia for causing masses of civilian casualties in the war with Yemen, Trump rewards them with more military arms sales and support. Trump also overturned the temporary ban on the sale of F-16s to Bahrain over their poor human rights record. The Trump administration is showing how much it is under the influence of its neocon National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster and Defense Secretary Mattis. Trump is also open to the extensive lobbying of Lockheed Martin. Congress can still block the sale during its mandatory 30-day review period, but that is unlikely since Republicans have not been known to be as concerned for allied nations' human rights violations. They're more concerned with being tough on defense. It is sad that Trump, nor any Republican representatives, are aware of the hidden agenda behind U.S. support for Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, all key partners in the funding and arming of U.S.-backed terrorists in Syria, including ISIS. But even more disturbing relative to Trump's foreign policy is the role that John McCain is playing with Trump's National Security Advisor and his Defense Secretary. The Daily Beast reported this week that Senator John McCain, another neocon, a virulent Trump critic, neoconservative, and one who backs all globalist initiatives, talks every day with Trump's National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster. All right. Finally, well, not quite finally, but reporting from Chuck Baldwin, who's a minister of the gospel, in an article entitled "The Trump Administration is Not Going to End Well." Quote, "People who voted for Donald Trump were voting for change. For that matter, that's what the people voted for Barack Obama were voting for in 2008. But Obama changed nothing. And it looks like Trump won't either. At least not the things that really matter. Trump has appointed as many neocons, war hawks, and insiders to his administration as Barack Obama or G.W. Bush, maybe more. His promotion of Obamacare 2.0 was a total embarrassment to everything he campaigned for. Trump allied himself with the despicable neocon Paul Ryan against conservative champions such as Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. He has promoted his 36-year-old Zionist son-in-law Jared Kushner to be the head of a brand new White House office. Kushner, a lifelong Democrat, is working with globalist elites such as Microsoft founder Bill Gates, Apple chief executive Tim Cook, Salesforce chief executive Mark Benioff, and Tesla co-founder and chief executive Elon Musk. Musk is so radical in his globalist ideas that he wants to extend his globalistic utopia to other planets. Government should run like a company. Government should run like a company. Really. The country's citizens are a government's customers. Really. The purpose of a company is to make profits for the executives and shareholders. Customers are viewed as a tool by which company executives and shareholders achieve the goal of making profits. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not the purpose of government. The purpose of government is simply to protect the freedoms and liberties of its citizens. Putting it in business terms, the people of the nation are not customers. They are the country's owners. They are not something from which to make a profit. They are something to be protected as a country's rightful leaders. This is so beautifully put. Listen well. The government does not exist to profit from the citizenry, but rather the government's only purpose is to protect the liberties that our Creator has given to the citizenry by natural law. The problem is that all of this killing and bloodshed that the United States Armed Forces are inflicting around the world is taking place with no declaration of war. There's absolutely no legal, moral, or constitutional justification for all of these global acts of military aggression. None. We're simply bullying our way around the world because our political leaders see America as an empire, not as a republic. Presidents seem to believe that they have the right to invade, attack, kill, maim, and destroy at will, simply because they have the muscle to do it. The power, in other words. Who was it? Mao Zedong, who said political power comes out of the barrel of a gun? Well, America's very powerful. We have a lot of weapons, sophisticated missile defense systems and jets and guns and things like that. So we go around bullying our way around the world and propping up the dollar as long as it serves our purpose. Meanwhile, we're enslaving most Americans through the Federal Reserve System, printing more money. I forget what the average American owes now, but it's probably $50,000 to $100,000 that you're in debt. So unless you're one of the elite, rich, how do we know that someday that the government might not just confiscate all your wealth and say, that belongs to us, you're in debt to us? Got your $300,000 home paid for? Doesn't matter. By then, maybe each American will owe $300,000 or more. So they'll just snatch your house. Oh, isn't it beautiful? Isn't it wonderful? Did the people who elected Donald Trump really intend that he turn America into a giant corporation and deepen and extend America's military involvements around the world? Somehow I don't think this was the change they had in mind. Again, this is not going to end well. Thus writes Chuck Baldwin. Now, you see, the Republicans aren't much different than the Democrats, really. I used to be a Democrat. I used to be a Republican. No, I wasn't a Democrat because I didn't believe in killing babies, and I didn't believe in same-sex marriage and things like that that are part of the Democratic platform. I don't believe in a lot of the government welfare programs either. The Bible says if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. Now, that doesn't mean we can't help those who can't help themselves. You know, there are people like that. But for the most part, Americans are able to work, but a lot of them aren't willing to. So they lost their home, they lost their jobs, but the government's going to bail them out. Of course, they created the problem to begin with. You know, what the government does, I've said this before, it's not original with me, but I heard it somewhere and I like it. What the government does is they kick you in the leg, they break your leg, and then they hand you a pair of crutches and say, see, without us, you couldn't walk. And that's about the extent of it. That's really a pretty good analogy. Now, the Republicans, they're the war hawks. They spend just as much money as the Democrats, but they spend it on the military. Democrats, they spend it on domestic. So the government will get bigger and bigger under either party. It doesn't matter. It's getting bigger under Trump. And incidentally, as I have affirmed before, I didn't vote for Donald Trump, in case you want to know. I'm a political atheist. I think both parties are equally beholden to the deep state, the global elite. They've been taken over by the billionaires like Soros, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Kissingers, the Bushes, people like that. But they will not win in the end, because the kingdom belongs to our Lord. Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever, saith the Scriptures. And so we know that Satan is making war against the church, and is seeking through these various global elite rulers to destroy the planet. Of course, they're hiding out. They've got their hideout somewhere with their food and their, technology to protect them through the whatever happens. But in the end, they're going to cry for the mountains to fall on them and to hide themselves from the wrath of God. So only the Christian will be safe, even though the body they may kill. God's truth abideth still, and we have this comfort that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So we have nothing to fear, really, but the Lord. And true biblical fear of the Lord is to reverence Him and respect Him and to depart from evil. All right. Continuing, despite the widespread hope among libertarians, classical liberals, non-interventionists, progressive peaceniks, and all those opposed to the U.S. empire that it may have some of its murderous reins pulled in with the election of Donald Trump, it appears that such optimism has now been dashed. While the hope for a less meddlesome U.S. foreign policy is not completely extinguished and would never have existed had the wicked witch of the Wicked Witch of Chappaqua been elected, a number of President Trump's foreign policy actions so far have been little different than his recent predecessors. President Trump's biggest blunder was his acquiesce to the deep state's coup of General Michael Flynn, the most Russian-friendly among Trump's foreign policy entourage. The U.S. is heading down a similar path of decline as it has squandered its wealth and treasure in the maintenance of an overseas empire, while it has expanded its welfare state at home, meaning less wealth which can be tapped from an increasingly unproductive and parasitic populace. Couple this with an onerous tax burden and inflationist monetary policy which has destroyed the purchasing power of the dollar, and gargantuan public debt, and you have primed the country for a financial cataclysm. Well, yeah, that's true. We have $20 trillion in debt right now that we owe as a nation, not counting the unfunded liabilities, which exceed over $100 trillion. We have, 5,000-year low interest rates? I don't know where they got that. Is it 500 or 5? No, I think they said 5,000-year low interest rates. Some mathematician or somebody came up with that figure.